The bell has rung. So get seated and join Elementary Schooled for today's interview.
I would like to give a special thanks to each and every sponsor for this podcast. Thank you, Bountiful Mazda, Complete Landscapes, IXL Learning Program, SRW, Security Training and Consulting, Taylor Learning Center, Utah Entity Services, and Viva Agree. Thank you. Welcome to Elementary School. This is Season 2, Episode 13, and today we have Caitlyn Lee from EdChoice joining us. We're talking about more school choices in education. We're at a time where there's more freedom and flexibility in how our students are educated. And we want to talk about the pros and cons of that. Our goal today is to have parents and educators learn about more options in school choice programs and how those programs benefit your children. So I'm grateful to you, Caitlyn Lee. And in our pre-interview, we were talking about how I just find it fascinating and amazing that you have had some experience in education before you landed your job with EdChoice. And so I can tell that you have a real appreciation for teachers and knowing how hard it can be. Is that right?
Yes, I do.
Will you include that in introducing yourself so listeners
Yeah.
know that you do have some background in education?
So obviously I was a student at one point myself, so I appreciate it from that side of things. And I like to always say that I understand education from every facet of education. I've been a student, obviously, K-12, and then undergraduate school, went to graduate school for a while and decided law school, being a lawyer, wasn't for me. But I also taught 7th grade math for several years, both at an urban school that's the most diverse school in my state of Oklahoma. And then also I have 6-year-old twins that attend a rural school here in Oklahoma, so a public school. So I very much appreciate what the teachers do. I love my kids' teacher. I loved teaching and working in the classroom. I also worked at a rural school during my time as a teacher's assistant. And after I left the very urban school, I taught at a public school in rural Oklahoma at Coweta as well. So,
wow. And you're also a Thunder fan. Go Thunder, because they're doing great.
Yes. We are in round 2 of the playoffs right now. So
yeah, that's really cool. We were hoping Utah could make it, but maybe next year.
Yeah,
so tell us about how you got to EdChoice and what is EdChoice, because I don't know if our listeners know what that is. And then it will lead into all that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, so I got to EdChoice because I'd worked for our state house here in Oklahoma. I worked with multiple legislators, most of whom coincidentally worked on education policy. That wasn't by design, it was just by coincidence. I think one of the 5 or 6 legislators I worked with over the years didn't have a heavy emphasis on education policy or education appropriations, but the rest were all very education minded. So by coincidence, I just kept being thrown into education policy. I took a break from working for the state house, and that's when I taught public school. And that's just because I moved away from Oklahoma City, lived in Tulsa.
And you're a very diverse school. I want listeners to know that, where you saw it all.
The most diverse school in the state of Oklahoma. So,
and you were brought in to take over a classroom that had not been managed very well.
Correct.
Your story is just amazing. So I do want people to know that, because education just resonates with our soul. Like, oh, she knows how hard it can be.
Yeah, so I came into the school to work as a TA with special education in about October. And in December, the principal called me in and said, you can teach math, right? And I was like, well, I'm working on certifying in it, but I don't take my test for a few days. He's like, but you can, right? And I was like, I mean, I guess so. And he's like, we'll petition for an emergency certification, but for now we'll hire you as a long-term sub.
You're amazing that you said yes.
I was like, I mean, I guess so. And so that was like the 17th or 18th of December. And I think January 3rd or 4th, I walked in and found out that morning that I wasn't just teaching, pre-algebra. I was teaching pre-algebra, algebra 1, and math connects.
3 different class
Yep, 3
curriculums.
different subjects.
I'm giving you a namaste right now because that really is something. And you said that experience really has helped you now that you're with EdChoice to understand and advocate for teachers, because sometimes you are thrown into something where you're like, whoa, this isn't exactly what I signed up for. But
as much as it is about the students, it's also for teachers.
Yeah.
It provides teachers options.
Yeah.
It provides teachers a way to remain educators when they get burnt out. And for those teachers that are in overcrowded schools, this is a potential option where students who are not getting their needs met can find other avenues.
And then how long did you teach before you ended up changing careers?
So I taught for about 3 years, and I only left because I was put on bed rest with my twins. So I actually went back to work at the state legislature here in Oklahoma. And my former coworker was joining EdChoice about that time, and he was like, I know you believe in school choice. And I actually, one of the things that led, he kept saying, well, come up and see the office, come up and talk to the CEO. I think we can convince you. And one of the things that finally triggered me to say, like, okay, I'll come and talk to you guys, was a Facebook post that I had put online from 2016, which would have been when I was teaching at Tulsa Union. And it was when the state of Oklahoma, or the state Senate and House, were trying to pass a bill on school choice for our equal opportunity scholarship, one of our school choice programs. And I had actually shared a news article about it and written a little paragraph, because very commonly the opponents to school choice are teachers unions. And so I had shared an article saying, as a public school teacher, I see why we need this in the state of Oklahoma. I have kids in my classroom that are getting lost, that no matter what I do, I cannot reach them. I cannot reach every kid the same, because they need a different environment. They need a specialized school. They have special needs that my public school cannot serve them.
So that article that you posted on Facebook, then that kind of led to you accepting this position for EdChoice. Yeah. And what is your role with them?
I am the director of policy and implementation. I did state work for a while, which means I went out into states and worked with legislators and partners.
So let's give an understanding for listeners. And I want to keep this somewhat simple so people know that, all parents, we all have a choice with where to put our children for school. So, and I did look at the research, at least for here in Utah, that 84% of parents apparently are really pleased with public education. But like you have already said, there are many instances where public education is not the right fit for your child based on their needs. So other options are private schools, charter schools, and a homeschooling program. And so will you tell us kind of how it works, first of all? What are the basic programs of EdChoice, and are these programs available in every state, and kind of what is that process like for anyone that just wants to think outside the box for their child?
Yeah, so just to clarify, my organization, we don't provide for any of them. We come alongside partners in the states so that states can provide the programs. And that very much depends on the state and the type of program. There are, and like you kind of hit the nail on the head on the number of types of programs there are. And school choice is so broad, and anything you can think of, there's probably a variety of that choice. And I like to say that I'm not a private school choice advocate, because I'm not. I'm a public school choice advocate. I'm a private school choice
I am too.
Advocate. I am a choice advocate. That's all it is. I'm an education choice advocate.
Yeah.
My kids go
education for what your kids need, and we advocate for them. Yes.
I'm a student and parent advocate. That's it.
Yes. Yes, I love it.
My kids go to a public school. I went to a public school. I'm actually a product of school choice, but public school choice. My grandparents had to fight to put me in a different public school, because at the time the sending superintendent had to sign off on a transfer.
I love
And
this. People, like, we have to advocate for our children. So parents, when
exactly.
you feel something, teachers, when we feel something, I've had to do that as a teacher. Like,
Yes.
I know that this child should not be pulled out of this resource program yet, even though you might be seeing something different than I am. We have to fight for those things, and especially
Exactly.
for our own children. So that's good for all of us to hear and to reinforce that.
And the thing that frustrates me is not all parents have the ability to advocate in the way that my grandparents did, or
Right.
know that they can.
Mhm.
And that's the frustration I do sometimes have with the public system, is it's kind of a conveyor belt. A child is born, a
Yeah.
house is the district, the child goes to that district.
Mhm.
So the thing that I personally, not a choice, advocate for more than anything is from the time that child is born, or a family makes the decision to adopt a child or start a family, I want them to immediately start thinking about their options. Will my kid go to public school? Will they go to private school? Will we homeschool? Will we choose the unbundled option where we, let them do extracurriculars at the public school, or do science at the public school, like through a tuition model, but we'll do, you know, a travel type program for sports when they get to that age. But we
Yes.
could do like ag type programs through 4-H, and it's whatever the parent can imagine and adjust and make work for their child.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be the same thing for each of their children.
Exactly.
Convenience may dictate that to an extent it has to be somewhat consistent for child
And
A to child
doable.
B.
Yep.
But it may not be. It may be that one child is completely content and being served by going to the local public school. It may be that the second child needs something completely different and opposite, where they're getting their services from 6 different providers. And it's making sure that parents have the ability to do that. And not just the ability to do that, but the ability to do that despite their income level. And that's the part that where school choice really comes in, is if you have the means, you can do that already.
Mm-hmm. But for
That's
people that can't, so that's where EdChoice comes in. So will you explain
yes.
that, what that looks like?
Yeah, so that's where school choice programs, it's about equalizing the playing field.
Mm-hmm.
If you have money,
And you can do private school.
you can do private school. If you have money, you can already choose to send your kid to a private school for part of the day, or pay for states that allow it, tuition to take chemistry and physics at your local high school, and then send them to a concurrently enrolled English course at the local community college.
Mm-hmm.
And teach them the rest of their classes at home through a hybrid micro school or homeschool program. So if you have money, that's already an option. If you're a single mom and you have to work, it's not an option. And when families are already paying into the tax system, and you look at the amount of that money that does flow into the school system, if their child is needing something other than that local school system, they should be able to use that money to educate their child. And that's where the school choice programs come into play. And so none of that money comes from EdChoice. We just help advocate alongside the legislators and local partners.
They choose the legislation, they figure out how to choose, but EdChoice guides them
Yes.
to how can we funnel or move this money around to make it beneficial for all students.
Correct. So
Essentially.
we our bread and butter, more than anything, is research. So we have a ton of research on our website. We conduct research all over the country on best practices and data.
There are a lot of other states that are using EdChoice, and the format might look differently. But in Utah, it was called the scholarship program, right?
Yes, it's the Utah Fits All Scholarship.
In Utah, there were over 15,000 applicants that would serve over 27,000 students, which means people really are interested in this. And so they did cap it off at 10,000 applications, but it did give an increase to teachers in Utah. So that was the good news. So are you involved in that, and how to make everyone benefit?
So Utah's original legislation was, several states do it this way, where they kind of bundle several policy ideas together. where they're kind of doing a teacher salary increase.
And that's what
and-
they did here.
Yes. And so they'll do this kind of bundled package where they're doing everything together. It's not our favorite thing to do it that way, to bundle several things together, because it can get messy.
Yep.
Arkansas did a very similar thing. They did some reading reform, some teacher pay increase things as well. Not that we're opposed to any of the other things occurring. It's for the cleanliness of policy and legislation. I like the separation. That's also coming from someone who's previously worked for State House. It's just cleaner to separate them. Also, as a former teacher, I'm not opposed to teachers making more, of course. As far as like students are leaving public schools and that hurting teachers, so there are several comments I'll make on that. One, the take-up rates for these programs is such that you're not going to suddenly not need teachers. That's not going to happen. First year take-up rate is anywhere from like 1% to 3% of your student population. If you had maximum utilization of your program, you're going to see classroom levels return to a place where teachers are going to be happy. The other part of that is part of those students that are going to participate in the program were already not in the program. We're already not in public schools. So in my ideal world, you are going to have, a good choice, a good percentage of kids that are new participants, but it's going to be a mix. Ideally, legislators either don't add a cap or they add an automatic escalator where it can increase over time and grow.
So will you talk about these three specifically? School vouchers, education savings accounts, and tax credit scholarships. And sometimes there's just confusion about what is what. Are these the three most popular?
So the most popular programs by far would be, so ESAs are considered the gold standard because they allow parents the most option. Voucher would be, tax credit scholarships and vouchers are the widest passed programs to date. Education savings accounts are the second most common.
So just using Utah as an example, since that's where I live and most of our listeners are from Utah.
Utah has a voucher program, a tax credit scholarship program, and an ESA program.
And an ESA. We have all three, but you're saying there's even more forms of those things. Okay.
So we actually, at EdChoice, we recognize 6 main types of school choice. There's an education savings account, a voucher, a tax credit education savings account, a tax credit scholarship, tax credits and deductions, and there's also refundable tax credits.
So will you explain what those three basics that we have in Utah, what they mean? So just to help clarify for parents looking into this.
So I'll start with the other two first.
Okay.
A tax credit scholarship essentially allows a taxpayer to receive a full or partial tax credit when they donate to a nonprofit that provides scholarships, private school scholarships. And the eligible taxpayer can be a business or an individual.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily for that individual to send their child to
it's to help somebody else.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
and to get the tax break. Okay. Correct. That's just a tax benefit is really what that is.
Yes. The second type is a school voucher. A voucher gives a parent the freedom to choose a private school for their children using all or part of public funding set aside for their children's education. The funds expended by the school district would be allocated to a participating family in the form of a voucher to pay for all or part of the tuition at the private school, and it can be a religious or non-religious school. You do have a voucher program, but it's the Carson Smith Special Needs Scholarship Program. That is a voucher program.
Okay.
And it actually, the average voucher amount for it is, our most recent data shows that it's about $5,600. And so the point of that program is it's specifically targeted for students with disabilities. And the voucher is written for students or to a student or the family. And then the family decides what school to send their students to. So any student, any public school eligible student between the age of 3 to 21 with a disability under the Federal Disabilities Rights Law, they're eligible to receive the voucher, and they can send their kid to, or the student can go to a private school.
That one is a voucher.
Yes.
Okay.
And
And
for
so the
that
one that's really popular right now is actually an ESA, and that's the Utah Fits All scholarship program, where you can get an account value of $8,000. Is that right?
Yes. And that one is an ESA.
Yes.
So
Okay.
an ESA, the best way to think about that one is think of it as an HSA or FSA account. So it allows you to have like an a la carte approach to education. So your program administrator in Utah is ACE Scholarship, and they've created a phenomenal handbook for families. It's a family handbook. And actually, if you just Google Utah Fits All Family Handbook, like the first link that pops up, but they do a really great job of saying these are qualified expenses, these are not. Parents can use it for everything from school tuition. They can use it for like behavioral therapy, occupational therapy, for like special needs students. They can use it for instructional materials. And that's the one that had an $80 million cap for $8,000. So 10,000 students were what would be served, and all of those slots were taken.
When the concern is this is taking away from public education.
So one thing I like to also clarify, and our fiscal analyst is a lot more eloquent at explaining this because he knows all the numbers. Students, the cost for educating a student in public school is a lot higher than the money being spent on a school choice program.
And isn't part of what they chose to do to offset this, at least in Utah, was to offer the additional $8,000 in salary increase for full-time teachers?
They did. So Utah did kind of a trade-off, and they did put additional money into public schools. But beyond that,
and you don't always see that for other states that do
you
that.
don't. And so for Utah, the state portion of K-12 spending is over $9,500. So that's not accounting for any federal dollars or local money going into the school. So you're already saving from the state portion over $1,000 per student. And that's not accounting for the local portion or the federal portion of money that goes into school districts. So the state is saving money when students are opting out of a public setting and instead choosing to go with the school choice program. One thing I also like to talk about when it comes to like teachers' options is we're seeing teachers that have left the classroom become entrepreneurs. They've gotten burned out on teaching in a traditional K-12 setting, and they're creating micro schools. They're creating hybrid schooling options, or they're becoming tutors and they're becoming ESA providers. And it really kind of allows teachers to set their own salary in many ways, because now they have these other options, whereas before they may not have made as much money tutoring. They now have these families and a platform to market their skill set and make additional money. It also allows for public schools to be providers for the ESA program. So public schools are allowed to put on the platform what services and what classes they want to offer and charge a tuition amount for those classes. So if a kid is participating in the ESA program and maybe they take, 6 of their courses through an online class, or mom teaches it through a curriculum, but mom doesn't think she can handle chemistry or calculus. They can take that through the local public school, and the public school charges a tuition amount that the parents are aware of, the parents opt into and choose, and the public school is able to receive that money back.
Even on an elementary level, can that be done, or only for secondary?
Whatever level. It's up to the local school district to make those decisions, and they will go on to that provider network. And it was allowed in year previously, which obviously this just went into effect with applications this year, but they did clean up language this session to make it more clearly defined of how local school districts would do that.
For 2024.
Correct. So that makes it so that the school is allowed to decide, and all that they have to do is clearly say, like, these are our offerings and this is what we'll charge.
So it is possible on an elementary school level to have a student come to school for the core subjects, and then depending on your district and
Yes,
how your school and district sets it up.
correct.
I don't know that that is available in our district yet, but I think these are the conversations that are happening. These crucial conversations are happening because of what, just exactly what you're saying. We're looking outside the box. What meets the needs of your child? My youngest is 16 and she is doing school so differently than any of my other kids. She goes till noon every day and gets some of her core subjects in class with a teacher present. And then she has online classes and also concurrent enrollment classes that she manages through an online program. And it has worked out so well for her. And then she also nannies for a couple of families in the afternoon so that she can have a work release. So we really can, we're at a time where we can look at school in so many different ways. What is the bottom line that you really want parents, educators, and professionals, people in general, to know? What is best to know about these programs?
Ask questions. Ask questions, and don't think that a checkbox is the limit. The sky is the limit, and every single one of your children has options. Every parent has options, and there is an option that will work for you. And if you aren't finding an option you feel like works for you, keep asking questions. Go talk to someone else. If there isn't an option that works for you, let's help make it. I mean, if the program isn't right, let's find something, let's make adjustments, let's make changes. That's how these programs are born. This is a movement, sorry to the dads, but this is a movement built on moms' backs. Some of the greatest advocates are moms that get angry because it's not working for their kids. It's built by teachers that are leaving the system or want a different environment. And it's built by moms that realize their kids need something else. So,
yeah. Thank you. You have filled us with so much good information, and I will list all of these resources in the show notes. And, if something isn't working for your child, go in and do the research and ask the questions, just like Caitlyn has shared with us today. We want to add a spiritual thought that just those feelings come. I just believe that a parent, when you get those feelings like this isn't working, to trust that and to pray. And I tell every parent, like, just pray, no matter what your religion is. All right. Just you pray for your child. Those feelings will come strongly to you. And I just believe that. I have that core belief, and you will be led to the resources that will help your child and your family, which is most important. Anything you want to add to our conversation today, Caitlyn? You're amazing.
Well, thank you. And I thank you for having me on. I think it's been a great conversation. And I'm hopeful it's very informative for families.
Thank you. And thank you for what you are doing for students, parents, and educators.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thanks for being part of today's class. To submit a question or topic for further episodes, please email elementary.schooled@outlook.com. School is out for today, but please remember, when we strengthen a child, we strengthen society.